So this tutorial is going to consist of two parts. In the first part, I'm going to quickly show you how you can use white noise to create a ghost breath. And in the second part, I'm going to be working with a recorded sample, and I'm going to be demonstrating a few different techniques to get demonic voices or scary voices. So for the ghost voice, I'm just going to be using the sampler section down here in Vital, and we're just going to be using the white noise. I'm going to be using LFO1 for the volume shape of the sound. I'm going to be using a shape like this, roughly. And so as I said, I just want to create a short ghost breath that's often used in horror movies or in horror games. And I'm already boosting the volume because this is going to be quite low. Let's see what this sounds like. Let's reduce the tempo here. We can already put reverb on this. Actually quite a bit. And now to make this sound more natural, more organic, and actually like a voice, we can use the filter section down here. Just make sure to route the sample through this, and we can use the format filters. So with the format filter engaged, it sounds like this. So this already sounds pretty much like what I wanted, but obviously you can play around with all the settings here. You can also use a second filter and have them run in succession, and use another format filter down here. And now the interesting thing also is if you just use different samples in here, now you're not gonna necessarily get this kind of ghost breath sound, but you can get other interesting sounds. So maybe let's just use a longer sample. And now because these format filters are so heavily modulating the sound, you're gonna get very interesting stuff. But yeah, back to the white noise. But because these sounds are very easy to record, I wouldn't really use this for a ghost breath sound. I would actually just use this technique for creating just completely different sounds with the format filters here. So if you record it, you would record something like this. And then probably just put some reverb on it. And then you already have this kind of sound. You can also pitch this around. These are very simple to record and simple to create, but they can be very effective. So in the second part of the tutorial, we're going to be focusing on this sound.
This is the sound we're going to create.
So just a very simple recording, and I'm going to be showing a few different techniques that we can use on that one. The first technique that's very often used is just putting reverb on the sound, recording it, and then reversing the sound. So I'm just using the reverb I added before, and I'm going to record this.
This is the sound we're going to create.
And after reversing, we get this kind of sound. And we can also combine this with pitch shifting. So that's one very easy technique to get a bit more scary sounding voice. But the downside of this is that we can't understand the text anymore. So the second technique is to actually just reverse the sound, apply the reverb, and then bounce it to audio. So like this. And then we reverse it again. So we have the combination of the reverse reverb and the non-reversed sample.
This is the sound we're going to create.
And again, we can use pitch shifting here.
This is the sound we're going to create.
And you can, of course, also pitch the sample before actually recording it to audio. This is going to give you a slightly different effect. And the third technique is going to be using a vocoder. So we are going to use a different sample to modulate this sound. And I'm just going to be lazy, and I'm going to be using just a very low-pitched version of the same sound to modulate itself, essentially. If we pitch it really low, we get this kind of sound. Let's increase the volume. So I'm just going to put this underneath this sample. And I'm gonna process this a bit. It sounds really muffled because we pitched it. And now this version. Let's deactivate the reverb and reverse this again. Actually, reverse this again as well.
This is the sound we're gonna create.
And now we can also pitch this one down to get a bit of a more interesting voice already.
This is the sound we're gonna create.
Now you can just pitch the sample down without using any warping. So the sample gets longer because it's played slower. Or you can just use one of the warp modes. Here in Ableton, you have a few different ones that you can use, but I think texture and the two complex ones are the best for this kind of stuff.
This is the sound we're gonna create. This is the sound we're gonna create. This is the sound we're gonna create.
So I'm going to use the complex one. Sounds very similar to the textural one.
This is the sound we're gonna create.
And now we're just going to use Ableton's internal vocoder and also a bit of EQ on the sound because we pitch it down. So we're going to boost the highs a bit.
This is the sound we're gonna create.
And now with the vocoder, we want the audio input of this track where we have our down-pitched version of the sample. And now we're getting this sound. So obviously not really working that well yet, but we don't really want 100% of this. We want to have more of the original sample in there.
This is the sound we're gonna create. This is the sound we're gonna create. This is the sound we're gonna create.
Without the vocoder, it sounds like this.
This is the sound we're gonna create.
And with the vocoder, it sounds like this.
This is the sound we're gonna create.
Now there are a few settings that you might want to play around with depending on the modulator. You're going to have to use different settings here. I think it's very interesting, especially if you are using a depth below 100%. You're going to get more of the modulator sound in there. So you can hear now.
This is the sound we're gonna create. This is the sound we're gonna create. This is the sound we're gonna create.
Let's actually just use another EQ afterwards.
This is the sound. This is the sound we're gonna create. This is the sound we're gonna create. This is the sound we're gonna create. This is the sound we're gonna create.
This sounds okay. So I'm just going to bounce this to audio.
This is the sound we're gonna create.
And now another thing you can do is create a different version of this with a different pitch. I'm going to try a quite a bit lower pitched version. And something I really like is the complex pro mode for this.
This is the sound we're gonna create. This is the sound we're gonna create. This is the sound we're gonna create.
Because it already adds like a second layer to this. So let's just bounce this. We can also see if this sounds better with or without the vocoder. So let's see without the vocoder, it sounds like this.
This is the sound we're gonna create.
And with the vocoder,
This is the sound we're gonna create.
I like a bit more high end in this. So I'm going to use the version without the vocoder and just bounce this.
This is the sound we're gonna create.
So now we can layer these two on top of each other. Let's just reduce the volumes of these and the volume of the second one a bit more.
This is the sound we're gonna create. This is the sound we're gonna create.
We can also process them a bit.
This is the sound we're gonna create. This is the sound we're gonna create. This is the sound we're gonna create.
So let's bounce this version again.
This is the sound we're gonna create.
And now let's use the technique that we used before. So we can just reverse this. Let's just grab the reverb from the other track and bounce this version to audio with the reverb on. And then reverse it again.
This is the sound we're gonna create.
You can use a lot better modulators for this. So if you actually have some sort of creature sounds, or you just have a recording of yourself, or you're screaming or grunting or something like this, then this is probably going to work a lot better than just a really low-pitched version of the sample itself. But you can also just use completely different stuff to modulate it and just play around with it. There's a lot of opportunity there to get interesting results. But I think these are the basic techniques that a lot of people use. And they're really simple, but they work quite well.